The presumed chairperson of this committee will call the meeting to order. First item to consider is approval of the agenda.
Roll call, sorry.
I'm sorry, roll call. Roll call?
Terry?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Ellen?
Here.
David? Oh, Ellen.
Ellen.
Sorry.
My
whole life.
When Alan and Biko and I worked together, nobody knew who anybody was talking to.
All right,
good.
and now we can move to item 2, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved as seconded?
I'll second.
Seconded, moved and seconded, further discussion, question? If not, call the question, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Public communication and comments? I do not see any. Adam, do you have any?
Nope.
Okay, we can pass on that. Approval of the minutes from the last meeting on August 29th.
You and I are what's left of that.
So we can,
I'll move approval.
I'll second it, I guess. You can say it never happened too. But I'll second it. Call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Discussion items. Move to Adam, starting with A, 2023 work plan, street trees, sidewalk improvement, street crack filling, asphalt street patching, and downtown streetscape.
Well, obviously, since the last time we met, we have a couple new members of the committee, as well as a new director of public works. So Alan Danhoff started with us a month and a half ago.
About, yeah.
We wanted to have this meeting sort of also to introduce Alan to you all that haven't met him, start kind of getting in a rhythm of trying to have meetings again. We haven't met mostly because, Mike Ehrenberg was on his kind of leaving, retiring, so sort of stepped back and have not met since August. So with Alan on board now, kick it back in and begin meetings. So certainly, I think Alan wanted to put this on here to discuss the work plan and kind of what's happening in the Public Works Department for 2023, correct?
Correct. Just to assure you that we are making plans to get some work done this growing season. So, it's my understanding we have we're ordering 25 trees.
Approximately, yes.
So we'll be identifying locations for those. The GIS app that we have for our urban tree inventory gives us the ability to actually document where trees have been taken down, what needs to be stumped. We have discussed internally how we're going to use it also to track who has voiced a preference to have their tree replanted, and try to give them the courtesy for actually reaching out to us and try to keep that on a first come first served basis. And then some of the trees that we're ordering will also be planted for the parks. Sidewalk improvement, there is a map included. It's got some green highlighted areas. We're going to continue working westward from, I think that's Ransom. I have reached out to Safe Step. They have already submitted a proposal. I've not had time to look that over. And then for the sidewalk sections that cannot be ground down to eliminate the trip hazards, we're going to attempt to include those in our State Street project as an additional bid item. It just make my life a little easier as far as trying to coordinate that, plus it's a little more incentive for people. I'm using that State Street project as an incentive to get other work done also.
And that's the State Street that's the bridge, right?
Correct, and we're going to touch on that.
Well, I live on State Street, so that's why I'm asking.
So, and then along with that, between the county and the State Street project, I'll get quotes on asphalt patching to see which way is more advantageous. And then just this afternoon, DPW lead Chris and I we're evaluating streets and coming up with thought process as far as how we're going to crack fill. I am going to attempt to divvy up the community into approximately 5 sections. Not all streets in a section would get crack filled. If they get below a certain pacer rating, we would forego crack filling, just because we'll end up using too much time and product for a street that's not worthy of trying to do much more in the form of maintenance. Additionally, along that, we want to place an effort on our arterials and collector streets. So we'll try to keep abreast of those on a year-to-year basis. Try to identify where perhaps new cracks have formed.
If a street was kind of deferred based on its condition for crack filling, are you also then tracking for, more major repairs? Is that kind of playing into it, obviously? Or not?
Right. I wish I had printed off the Pazer map for you. It really gets down to the level of degradation as to whether or not we're going to do crack filling, or even in some cases to what extent we'll do asphalt patching. There was a situation or a condition brought to my attention by a resident on Scott Street. We're probably going to do a small patch there because we have dirt coming up through the road in an area, but arguably we should be doing probably at least the parking lane for the full length of that block.
Okay,
I just can't justify that given the condition of the road.
right.
But we do, because that road is not on a foreseeable game plan to be replaced, we want to at least address the fact that mud is pumping through the road.
Okay.
So, as far as asphalt patching, my predecessor's game plan was to continue patching some areas on Union Street in close proximity to the areas that were patched last year. I am in agreement with that because that road, for the most part, is still largely in good shape. So it makes sense to do the patching there. With the budgeted monies that we have, those monies will likely be used on just Union Street. Additionally, with that, we have the downtown streetscaping project that involves ornamental posts, some additional benches, trash cans. We will start doing some locates to identify if there's any underlying buried utilities that are in the way, because these street posts will encompass an 18 or 24-inch diameter by 3 to 4 foot deep concrete pier to resist wind movement. So it is something that I believe will be new to the crews as far as that level of work. So we'll probably, talking over with Chris, we'll probably grab 1 or 2 that are kind of towards the periphery as a trial run, get our legs underneath us, and then move forward progressively through that downtown area with that through the course of the summer. I will be in the next week or so starting to evaluate how we might consolidate or eliminate and minimize the amount of street signage that's down there. There's a lot of different signs down there, and try to figure out what we can do to minimize that.
I assume you're working with the police department for
I
traffic
will be.
control.
I'll be reaching out to Chief Wallner about especially the no parking signs. How frequently do they need to be replaced? Things like that. And most recently, we did start doing some ditch work in the area of Liberty and, is that West Street?
That is, yeah.
At the top of the hill there?
Yep.
This street has silted in, or the ditches on both sides of the road have silted in over the course of years, and have been overtopping some driveways, things like that. So just today we at least got we were able to excavate one ditch so that at least was no longer, should no longer under a reasonable storm be overtopping a driveway. But that's going to be a fairly substantial project over the course of the summer, where we'll work on not only getting the ditch formed, putting some what we call ditch checks in there to slow the velocity of the water, reestablishing vegetation, cleaning out culverts, and it'll be on both sides of the road. There's a fair amount of gravel shoulder erosion that is largely due to the fact that there's been a buildup of soil and turf between the gravel shoulder and the ditch. So we'll be working on that also.
So on downtown streetscaping, do you coordinate with Ripon, Maine and the bid group at all to see there's no overlap or everybody's doing something in a relatively coordinated fashion, if you will?
I'm not aware of any other projects going on down there. I walked the area with Craig T-Bond, and I'll be keeping him in the loop as far as what our activities are. But I'm not aware of anything else going on.
If you're talking to him, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I had a concern about our Friday night concert series, if there's any equipment or anything, that it would be just a lot of traffic down there.
I'm sure Craig will keep me apprised of that, so that it would not be our intent to leave equipment overnight, just because that just invites vandalism.
Yep.
The other thing is street line painting also. I've expressed to our foreman to place an emphasis on attempting to at least get that downtown area kicked out before Memorial Day.
Thanks. And your piece on the street trees, am I to understand that that would be the trees in a terrace or within 5 or 10 feet from a curb, generally?
Yeah, anything that's still within the right of way.
Would people that live in those places where they lost a tree, would they know to ask first for a tree, or are they going to assume that, well, this tree will get replaced? I mean, I guess I wonder if people might assume that, and then they wonder if their tree didn't get replaced, and we say, well, first come, first serve, but I might have thought that was a tree in the terrace. Wouldn't you just do my tree if I lost it?
Because
So-
government
so-
is magic.
Yeah, so I pulled up a couple things here just to kind of give everybody an idea of what we're kind of looking at in terms of like tree inventories, and some of the paper on there is not it's in black and white. So you know, when you said it was green, it was like, oh, and not green. But basically, the tree inventory is up online. It's accessible to the public. People can look outside their house and see if they have a tree in the boulevard, and they can, you know, determine based on the tree inventory we had done on what the condition of their trees are in the boulevard. So if you can zoom in on your property, look at it. If there's a dot on here of a certain color, there's a likelihood that that tree gets removed. So over on this side of town, there is a green ash that is dead, that needs to be removed. We are currently working as a staff to preemptively remove significant amounts of ash population in our streets and in our parks because they will die and as they deteriorate from the ash borer infestation, they will become a greater liability for the community in terms of falling, as well as a larger cost for cleanup if they continue to grow slowly, but get bigger. So we are taking down ash trees across the community as a main directive of the urban forestry plan. The goal is then to plant trees. In addition to that, we do have a city tree planting program where residents can apply to have trees planted in the boulevard. When we have our tree order done, we usually plant in the fall. So if somebody does have one taken down, they can register to get a tree put back and be a priority, as well as Alan and Lisa are working on setting up a layer in here where we can identify if someone has a ash tree taken down in front of their house or something else and they want a tree planted, we can map it on here as a planting site. On this as well, you can see there's like different little areas here. So like this X here, that's a stump that needs to go. Gray here is a planting site. So the goal would be to, identify planting sites where we took down trees first and foremost, as well as where people want them. We don't want people that don't want trees. We don't want to plant trees in front of houses that people don't want the tree if they don't take care of it. Sometimes people, will purposefully damage it. That happens quite a bit. So just managing this a little differently moving forward is what Alan and his team have started to do. And then I think he just had training on it yesterday or today. So basically, as trees get taken down, they will be removed from the system and no longer documented in the inventory. So very different way than we've done it before. And then
Before we move on.
Yep.
I'm assuming when we do our order, we're doing a mixture of trees. We're not just doing a like-for-like replacement based on the recommendations from the inventory, right?
I generally handle buying of the trees. We work with a nursery outside of Chilton. They have a decent number of species and a nice selection. I do not generally purchase trees less than 1 inch in DBH. They are a variety of species. Like last year we bought a variety of oak, elm, linden, State Street maples, a variety of different trees because, as Alan and I have talked about, we want to place the right tree in the right place. So you don't want to plant an oak next to a power line or a house close to a house. You want to plant a boulevard linden or a State Street maple, something that is a diverse tree that we don't currently see in our inventory to promote diversity, to avoid another catastrophe like the ash borer.
Yeah.
We need to diversify. Maple, we buy those still because they are a good tree, but we are going to buy less of those. So honey locust, lindens, Kentucky coffee trees. We are going to try some weird stuff here and there as well, just because it's for the health of the urban forest. So we're kind of processing through all of that, but the urban forestry plan, as well as my experience and Alan's experience with urban forestry, is fairly strong. So we'll make sure we continue to execute that.
Yeah, I remember in the inventory when we met with that forester, she said that our diversity was not so great, and that was something that we should be really focusing on. So glad to hear it.
The company that we're using also understands that in my previous community, we bought from the same company, and they actually provide good counsel as far as diversifying in our previous community. They actually evaluated what we have, and they help us with our selection to help us maintain that moving towards that diversification.
So you're gonna try a California redwood somewhere?
We try to.
I don't know if we have the climate for it.
Okay, I'm kidding. Okay. Well, then if we've exhausted all talk on item A, can we move to item B, automated refuse collection?
Well, prior to my arrival, there was an effort that wherever we were entering onto private property to collect refuse, then we had reached out to them and advised that they would need to sign the indemnification agreement that is in the packet. We have a large number of those customers that have indeed signed those, and others that chose not to, then we're collecting curbside at this point in time. We did just, I believe, we're close to resolving collecting from a duplex condominium in, is it Stone Ridge? It's a driveway that goes to 2 dwelling units. It's a duplex, but it's part of a condominium association. Initially, for the past few months, we have not been going down that driveway because we were not certain. One, we didn't have the indemnification agreement for a while, and two, with the bigger truck, we didn't know if we could make the turn. We did a drive down that road and collected garbage, and we can make it without having to do a reverse movement. So we're just wrapping up some further research as to who is the responsible party for signing the indemnification agreement at this point in time. Basically, we've asked them to demonstrate to us, is it the 2 condo owners or is it the condo association that needs to sign that agreement?
Good luck. Because that's in my district.
As Adam and I talked with our attorney this morning, it should there be damage to the driveway, which I'm fairly convinced that over the course of time there will be, just due to the weight as well as the tight turning movements and how with a big truck, when you make those tight turning movements, it actually tears the pavement. We want to make sure that it's signed by the party that has the authority to sign it.
So when do we decide to pull into private property, albeit a condo development like that? I mean, it seems to me that that's the development, that's not.
Yeah, by ordinance, we provided a copy of the ordinance to show in the ordinance, it gives a specific area where cans are required to go onto the curbside. And that is, I believe, how many units? 5 or? It's right.
Less than 5.
Less than 5.
Less than 5.
We require it to be taken to the curb, okay? So through some of these, obviously, you have a duplex, right? We're going onto private property to do it. That would not, but what we're considering it is a complete PUD development. So that development, that whole entire condo association includes multiple areas. So we are sort of lumping them in. But the ordinance is what directs us primarily of where collection is supposed to occur from a residential standpoint of multifamily versus, say, your traditional, single family or, smaller multifamily residential. So beyond that, I would say 99.9% of our residential districts allow for can-side collection. And then we do enter private property to collect multifamily in multiple areas. So those are apartments and, complexes of that nature.
So in this case, because it was a duplex, we just looked at it as being a duplex. When we looked at it from a mapping standpoint and then identified, well, it's part of a larger condominium association that has upwards of a dozen or more units, then we determined that it was appropriate to classify it as multifamily. Now it's just a matter of determining who is the appropriate party to sign the agreement.
I understand all that. I guess I'm just throwing it out there that if that's what the city likes to support, that's fine. To me, it's kind of like, if I am a developer, it's a private development, and curb pickup of trash recyclables should be at the curb, right? Because one developer may have a vast development and another one may not have much of a development at all.
They have the option to do private collection.
Right.
And
So I was going to add,
Yeah.
that shouldn't that be something that the city could ask them to do? I don't know.
we can work that into a development agreement with a certain developer at the front end of something. Where we've sort of lost it is, frankly, just over time, we have been collecting at your multifamily and commercial properties and entering private property to do so on commercial and multifamily. We also allow X amount of cans or 350 gallon cans for every X amount of units. We don't offer recycling, so they have to privately contract, a lot of the multifamily units have to privately contract for recycling already. So this is an area, I mean, in talking to Alan and previously with Mike, you know, we're working through a lot of these issues through collection of refuse, right? Making it as efficient and trying to get things down, you know, route-wise, taking the steps to do this as efficiently and effectively as possible. You know, with the goal of, you know, if we have to address these things after we can't do it operationally and it becomes a challenge because of the standards that are set, that's a conversation we'll have to have and change ordinances. But at this point in time, you know, I think we want to, you know, give it a crack and try as hard as we can to continue to collect, provide this service efficiently and affordably, and see, you know, see where we end up after a year or two. We have a new truck. We're trying to, you know, have routes. There's other suggestions of how to better route. So we continue to work through it all, but we are entering private property. We don't want to enter private property for, you know, single family residences. That's not how this works. So that has been some of the struggle of dealing with this through the hold harmless. And I will just note, Alan and I talked this morning as well, just a primer for you all, the recycling contract is coming up, just to start thinking about that. So we will go to request for proposals to do recycling. That was moved to a fee. We currently own all the cans. The cans are 65 gallon cans. We have been told multiple times that that can is not large enough for bi-weekly collection. So as you think about this moving forward, we will do requests, but we will also discuss about putting into that request the cost of moving to a 95 gallon can for commingled recycling. So we will bid that out in the months to come and see who is the most competitively priced for that service. But I just wanted to let you know that it was happening, but we have received a lot of feedback about the size of cans. As you are aware, the brown boxing of recycling and how people handle that becomes a challenge, but maybe there's a solution by offering a larger collection device.
On that note, intermixing the smaller and larger cans, is that a problem operationally with the pickup, with the truck, or do we not know that at this point? Or?
For the private hauler, I don't know. Probably not. For us, we can pick up the 65
If
gallon.
we're picking up the 65s, we can pick up the bigger ones.
Yeah. So I think we pick up the 350s, right?
Yeah.
So
The, historically what became a problem, there used to be a 36 or a 32 gallon one. They were very narrow. And with the automated collection, what a lot of companies were experiencing, that those would slip through the fingers and end up in the hopper. So a lot of where we're at today as far as entering on private property, what my experience in my two other communities is when we went from using rear load garbage trucks and a man, you know, dumping the can in, and to where we are today, there was a lot of personalized service that was provided probably prior to going to automated. And then once we went to automated, that's when most communities started saying, this is the way that we have to operate it from an efficiency and time management standpoint. So, while it's not necessarily desirable to be entering onto private property, it's not uncommon.
Okay.
So who's going to make the final decision on the multifamily condominiums? Who's responsible? Is that going to be like WUD and somebody from their side? Or how are we going to make this decision?
it's generally a team effort. Ultimately, it's myself and the Public Works Director.
Okay.
Some of them are straightforward. This one wasn't straightforward until we, like I said, took a look at it from higher up in the air and said, well, you know, when you think about it, it's not it's not just a duplex, it's part of the condo association. We didn't look at it that way from the very start.
And from your point of view, if the duplex owner isn't getting the service, then that would be on them to contact their association to then go ahead and sign the indemnification. You know, that pressure would have to come from that side, because I don't think the city has a lot of options at that point really to move forward, right? If the owner of the property is not willing to cooperate, then.
The conversation we had this morning, we just want to make sure the indemnification agreement is assigned by the authorized individuals so that should there be damage, we're properly covered.
And frankly, this has been a long, we started this process going back to August, and there's been a lot of effort going into getting indemnification agreements. There are areas where we're, you know, in commercial or multifamily pickups, where we're crossing multiple property owners to get to somebody's can. And so we have to get an indemnification agreement from everybody that we're crossing, because they have easements or access points that are a little restricted. So it has been a struggle. So I mean, most of the time it's not been, you know, we can explain people, they understand, and it's a simple sign the agreement and we're good. Other times it's taken a lot longer to sort of weed through this. We're trying to be consistent as we can when looking at each one of these cases, because every case certainly is a little different. But we're weeding through it and making progress, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I got one more question.
Sure.
Since we seem to be growing in our wind situation, and it tends to flip the trash cans over and blow the trash out and through the neighborhoods, is there anything we can do when they're sitting on curbside that could help reduce the fact?
I think first thing and foremost is not overfilling the can.
Right, yeah. I've seen some recycling that is being blown over, and this gets into the need for the larger cans. Just the other day, I stopped and picked up a couple of milk jugs. One, they could have squashed them, but they didn't. But when I got over there, what it was is the lid was slightly ajar, so the wind picked it up and then started, you know, sucking contents out of there. But with the mid-size carts, for a 2 week, in a 2 week period, your average family is going to fill that in less than 2 weeks. So that's been my experience in now the third community. I myself have the largest recycling cart, and it's just my wife and I. And it is all but full every 2 weeks. And a large part of it is because of all the cardboard from shopping online.
And I would,
You need to break it down.
Yep, got to break it down, even when it's broke down.
Grants, because I see the same thing you do. I have my recycling, I use once a month, because I break everything down. And then that weights down the container, so it's not going to fall over and blow around.
I've had my containers blow over, covers are seated on there fully, and I mean, I'm in a interesting spot. Right across the street from me is basically a bare open field. So that doesn't help the fact, but.
and I certainly would just advise people, if there's a storm coming or there's wind, you know, we say get it out by, 6 o'clock in the morning. A lot of people are in the habit of putting it out the night before. If there's a big storm, wait till the next morning. I think that is a reasonable request to ask, and if it does tip over, we would request that you go pick it up instead of just let it blow if your can tipped over. And a lot of these issues, certainly taking some precaution or some measures to prevent them and cleaning up after would be helpful.
Just one last note on that maybe. Is the city aware of any other ways that cardboard could be handled or recycled?
You can take it down to Grants
Yeah.
on Douglas
Yeah, Douglas
in
Street.
large
Yeah.
quantities and pile it there.
But
And
you should, as a courtesy,
Yes.
you
So
should
right.
flatten it out,
Yes.
because people just throw
Yeah.
whole boxes in there. And there have been times when I will flatten them out because it's just not fair to just
Right, just,
dump it.
and fill up the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
Yeah,
And if you're gonna throw your pizza box in there, take the half-finished pizza out before you do it.
yeah. Just, yeah, on that note, maybe we can just,
We advise people of that
yeah.
all the time.
Just when they call in, and, yeah.
It's a wonderful service for our community.
Okay. Item B is done. We can move to item C, right-of-way permit policies and ordinance.
I'll just start with this. Alan and I have been talking through this quite a bit. This conversation obviously started last time we met. There's a draft ordinance. We have sort of beefed that up a little bit. Since the last meeting, Public Works as well as utilities have worked to sort of beef up our right-of-way permitting processes. We've had multiple issues. I know, Jeff, you've always complained about the double poles. What can we do to take care of that? So, you know, we've drafted an ordinance. We would recommend, just based on legal with LUD and everything, we've added a section to the ordinance about if a pole is dilapidated or unsafe, we can have it removed. In addition to that, you know, they need permission to put poles in the right of way. And when they are removing their apparatus or their improvements from the pole, they need to get rid of it. How will that help us moving forward? I think we can talk a little bit about this, because we have experienced a significant amount of right-of-way work, and we are going to see more this year. So getting this ordinance in place and in front of the council to approve to help us better manage this moving forward would be helpful. Yes.
Does that, Jeff's issue, if I remember correctly, was the double poles.
All right,
Yes.
Will
well,
this address the double poles? Are you
So-
asking
so-
people to migrate their stuff off the old pole to co-locate onto the new pole?
Well, you've got that in the City of Ripon memo piece. That should be in the ordinance. I like that paragraph B.
We have to be very careful about how we handle this, okay? From the standpoint of what happened in the past, whether it was approved, and how it was handled and or permitted. We can use the policy that is in there to get to the same point. What we are essentially doing is saying that there's only one utility allowed in our right-of-way with poles, and that would be Alliant, right? Anybody else would have to produce an easement or a resolution saying they have permission to be there. That will be hard for them. The problem has become over time is, if you look back there, there are poles. Alliant likely had an easement or some permission to do the lower pole. At some point, they did the upper pole, right? At that time, the other utilities on the lower pole that stayed, whether that be Charter or Spectrum, Charter Spectrum, CenturyTel, Brightspeed, whatever they're called, AT&T, anything, they did not co-locate. And the easy way to do it is Alliance just said, well, we'll sell you the pole for $1, and then it's yours, right? So that's why you have this problem. Through the ordinance and through the policy and through our right-of-way permitting, we would be able to basically force them to co-locate at that point in time because they no longer, as a utility, based on the ordinance, if we're assuming everyone is Alliant, they would no longer be able to have that second pole. Okay, they got to get rid of it because the other one does not have a right to be there via resolution or ordinance or easement. It becomes tricky because they all do have utility rights within the right-of-way. They are all considered public utilities. So they do have some rights and to provide that service. So we have to be a little strategic about it and set the expectation through permitting that, you know, this is not the same, you know, just come and ask for a permit and you can put that pole there and not address the other one. So I think Alan can talk a little bit more about his experience with it and what we're kind of getting to. But this is a very, we can't force anybody out per se right now, but we certainly can, through the policy and the ordinance moving forward, make this a process that gets to an end where we don't have that happen anymore.
So in the case of the shorter poles, those were bigger poles, they cut them when they jumped off them, left the other ones on. If they can still get onto the new pole, you're not taking away their right to provide the
But we
service.
wouldn't allow them to do it without co-location.
And
We
there's a
would force
cost for that.
co-location, and then we would say, we're not giving Alliance the permit to do it in the right of way if they don't co-locate. And then once everybody co-locates, it's on Alliant to get everybody on board at that time to co-locate. Then, once they're off, you remove it. Because what they're gonna say, and the other utility is gonna say, well, forget about it, I'll pay you $1 for the pole because it cost me $1,000 to locate.
Right.
And so they'll just take the easy way out, and which was done in the past. What you have now, though, is the underground, and we're getting to a point where poles are becoming less of a presence and a technology or how they transmit the services, and they're going underground. So there are significant portions of town that Alliant is doing underground. Okay, so they'll leave poles. We need to get the ordinance passed and something in place quickly to get it, along with the permitting, to get not only Alliant underground, but everybody else that's on it. Because the south side of town will be seeing a project done by Alliant upcoming to underground Berry. It doesn't really make sense in our conversations with Alliant in permitting this. The other utilities can co-locate. They can go under with them. They're choosing not to because we aren't forcing them to, or because it's cheaper to just stay on the pole.
Let it sit.
So, or if they don't have a service there, they let the dangling line go. They don't care. There are parts of town, even since the windstorm, that you have cords and wires hanging. So there are other parts of town where Spectrum is going under, Alliant is already under, and Brightspeed wants to go over top. So there's so many layers to this, and Alan has done a fantastic job of trying to get a policy together quickly, because these companies are all coming to us now. And we are completely reacting at this point because this is new. I mean, we've had the bug tussle go through town, and we've had issues with water and wastewater, with Jeremy's department getting their utilities bored directly through the double poles. We're done with it. We need to beef up the ordinance. Lud's perspective is this is the ordinance we have in place that can reasonably get to the point we need to get to, coupled with the permitting and the policies that Alan has put in place to promote co-location, and frankly not permit activities in the right of way unless you're going all together, or unless you're using the best and newest technology or the best practice to ensure that it's the best product at the end, and it doesn't look like, doesn't look shabby like the double poles. It has been a fun one, hasn't it?
Yeah. Every day is a learning experience. Brightspeed is going to be doing a citywide fiber optic project. Their initial approach is they just want to lash on to their existing copper, use that as their support mechanism. Well, the way the industry is going is that everything.
You use copper instead of fiber?
The existing copper is what is their existing infrastructure that's already strung.
Okay. Oh, they're
What they
using-
want to do is they just want to relash the fiber optic onto that copper. Well, the copper eventually is no longer going to be in use.
Right.
And so the discussions I've been having with Brightspeed and their designer is like, no, sooner or later that copper will be abandoned, meaning it's no longer going to be used. So let's put the fiber optic underground right now. And I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe I have gotten them to step back and think about it.
Well, as long
And
as
we're going to have more dialogue.
as long as the trenching is open, that's a huge cost for them, they can use it. Just so people understand too, I don't know, are we on camera?
Yeah.
Okay. When you put a new pole in like that, it's like real estate. It's like you have a multifamily dwelling and you rent out pole
Yes.
space. So people, they make money by having the utilities co-locate on their poles. So there is money involved in that. Whereas, and then it happened a few years ago where AT&T could use Charter Spectrum's fiber underground. We don't want to do
You're
any of that.
exactly right, and even in the Alliant Energies, where they're boring in for power at this point, in their application, it includes that boring in is for transmission of other utilities.
Right. And that's the most efficient way to do it.
But they're putting the conduits in, right? So what we're asking is in those areas that there's Brightspeed or Spectrum, that at that point they co-locate.
Yep.
And Alliant ends up getting, they can charge rent for the putting it in the conduit under the ground, just like they get charged for the poles. And so it's going to take kind of working with Alliant primarily to get the others to follow them in, and sort of make sure that Alliant is aware that co-location is now the standard here.
I have a question about the permitting. You mentioned that when the power lines, when Alliant would leave a pole, that they could then sell that pole. In the permit as it exists now, I'm assuming that that's allowed and doesn't trigger any sort of review or anything.
See, this is where exactly. So as we become more sophisticated in this approach of permitting in the right of way, Alan will request, okay, Alliant, you're doing a project. I want a list of every pole, and which one's going, which one's leaving, which one's staying, which one's getting replaced.
Right.
And then if there's one staying, who's going to own it? Because we want to know who is going to be the responsible party.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of poles that, frankly, we still see out in the field that have dangling lines on, and you're calling Alliant, and Alliant is saying it's not our pole or it's not our utility.
If this project, conceivably, if this project right here were to be submitted today, I would see a set of plans that say install new pole, and if I see an absence of remove existing pole, it's going to trigger the question.
Yeah.
I don't think that there was an awareness to look for that in the past. I wouldn't have known to look for it until largely, as Adam said, what government does is reactive to a negative situation that you experience.
What is Brightspeed? Are they part of Bug Tussle or
CenturyTel.
Century? Okay.
So we're trying to get people to co-locate, go underground, clean up after they've left. That is the goal of all of this. And but we will have significant activity in the right-of-way, likely over the next couple years, from these entities that we are talking to almost daily at this point.
Yeah.
What we're just seeking is a recommendation to move the ordinance forward, as well as just, clearance on the policies for permitting. There are other things in the permitting, I think Alan has, about identifying things and doing handholds, whatever, I don't know.
Right. Another, coming from Kimberly, TDS just did a village-wide build. Well, we had gotten wind of it from a negative experience, I think it was in the Wausau area. All of a sudden you see all these pedestals that are about 30 inches high up and down the street. And it's like, that's not what we want for the look in our community. So I'd already talked to Adam about that when I saw that Charter was looking to do just that on Jackson Street between Stanton and Douglas. I looked at the set of plans and there's all these pedestals. Well, we're not going to let that happen. So I got Adam's buy-in on it, and then I talked to Charter and said, this all has to go underground, including handholds, and that, so there's been no resistance on their part on that. They just need to now plan better as far as where are our utilities, where are everyone else's utilities, and where can they then locate all of their underground work so that, I guess we're all playing nice in the sandbox together.
And I think too in here, there's distances from water mains. We're trying to keep them away from our stuff. So the policy in itself, sets some good expectations for people to yeah.
Question. Bud Tussle left pedestals on State Street. And what are those for? What are those things for?
I don't know if they plan to provide service in that area, or if that's just, there is splice points that they
Slice
need.
point probably.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because they're about 30 inches high.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're looking for someone to make a motion to recommend this to council?
Sure.
I will make that motion.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Other question? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Then we move on to item D, capital projects, overview of 2023 projects.
I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Oh, I mean, we just wanted to kind of give heads up. Projects we will be completing are the State Street reconstruct. That is from Union up to West, with the bridge area there being redone. Tigert Street Bridge removal and path installation at Horner Park. And then the last one would be bidding out trail work in Murray Park to pave the rest of the trail and install a trail through the park. Those are the major capital projects for the year. I didn't want to get too far into it. We're planning through them and hope to bid them out in the next 2-3 weeks.
Okay.
When are we going to see a 5-year capital improvement plan?
There's one available online.
Okay.
I will just caution that that is an area that is ever changing.
Well, it's just a plan. It can be like a chessboard.
It is out there, available online for view, and I can get copies of it. We just updated it again. I would say the general challenge in the current situation is in working with Jeremy and the utilities. State Street became a bridge reconstruction and a road paving project, now to a full road reconstruct. So the water and wastewater will be done on that project. And so that project jumped from about a $600,000 project to north of, anticipated $600,000 to north of $1.1 million. So utilities alone, which are just about a block, are about $225,000, and you have curb and gutter involved as well. That's another 200-some thousand, so estimated. So that's what we're running into. Jeremy's been, we had the optimized corrosion control project that they did. They're working on obviously well site. And I just emailed him today how much SCADA we can do based on State Street, costing that out of the budget as well. So we're kind of shuffling things through the year as well, just based on that project costing a little bit more. I have plans, but they're preliminary at this point. I just wanted to provide more of an update.
And 2 other projects, just waiting for, we're doing, upgrading the 4 signalized intersections.
That's right.
And then we're just waiting for components to come in for 2 of those.
And you're updating the LEDs?
LED, and then we're adding the, is it the voice?
Yes, the APS systems, automatic pedestrian crossing systems.
So the LEDs I have a question about because they don't generate a lot of heat. Are you concerned about snow covering them in the winter?
We'll have to
Is it-
identify a way to clear them.
Okay,
Yes, I am aware of that, so.
just a
Yeah.
little concern.
Yeah, the last storm
Yeah.
covered half. One's down on Blackburn and Jack.
And then the other one is pending a grant application that is to convert all of our city-owned streetlights to LED.
Okay.
I have just a question on city streetlights. Are you looking at any of the upward light reflection that streetlights do in regards to like night sky and excess light pollution, so to speak?
I have not, based upon the diagrams of what I have seen installed, I believe that they are dark sky sensitive.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I just know that some of the, for some of the sodium, if you just take that assembly out and you just put an LED assembly in, it's not really optimized per se.
They're all new heads.
To
all
get
new
the light
heads.
down. Okay.
Even the utility companies are employing all new heads when they swap them out also.
I'll just mention too, in terms of capital projects, a couple updates. The city did try a CDBG survey on Houston Street to see if there was an income ability to get an income-driven grant. That area did not meet the income requirements, so we will shift our focus likely to the Hamburg area. In talking with the utility department, there are a lot of lead service lines in that area as well, so we will shift our focus to trying to look at Hamburg, unless there's a better street out there. With income limits, you need to be 51%, above 51% of LMI. So that is a targeted approach where we do surveys, as well as we did apply for a bipartisan infrastructure legislation grant for St. Wenceslas for $500,000 of about a $1 to $1.1 million project on that street. So just about every street project with a reconstruct, about 2 blocks is pricing out at about $1.1 million nowadays.
Okay. Not any other questions on that item? We could maybe move to Department of Public Works Facility Progress Update.
At this point, I'm just this afternoon drafting an email for what we hope are final comments to come up with put the finishing touches on the final conceptual design. It is oriented in a north-south configuration. It will abut the street. The parking garage will be the closest part to the street, and then to the south, what would be the southwest corner will be the office. North of that will be Jeremy's division, and then beyond that, the maintenance garage and wash bay.
Very good. Any other comments, questions on that item?
So how far is the approval on that? I mean, is it approved project or is it just approved to research the project?
So the project research has been done last year. The conclusion was to replace the existing garage due to it being built in 1957 and no longer suitable. So we have been since January meeting bi-weekly with the architecture and engineering firm with staff. Mayor Grant and Council President Gallups have been joining us in that effort to review plans, look at orientation of things, scope it out. The components of it include, sort of your standard, garage area, maintenance areas. We have created an area for the water department as well, and an office space. So the project will continue to move forward. The council will be receiving a report probably in May regarding kind of initial concepts. And then also talking about financing it with Ellers will be coming up. And then ultimately with the contract with SEH that was approved in January to design it, the goal would be to bid out the project after final design is done in August, September. So October, November-ish into December, bid it out. If everything goes according to plan and it is not way over budget or something
Well, the new
crazy
building
happens.
will last another 70 years, so just get a 50-year mortgage on it, right?
Yeah,
We'll just be good to go.
Yeah.
30 years would be okay too. I don't know what bonds, what's the cost of bonds these days? What's the
It
percentage?
just depends, but we'll look at that too, because there are programs out there through USDA and whatnot where you can take it out 40 years
Okay.
and things of that nature. So it's coming at a time that from a debt perspective,
It's a good
we should be able to handle it, with retiring of other debt and closure of TIF districts. So, we'll continue to look at design. Ultimately, it'll be a council decision if a contract is awarded to build the project.
And the Department of Public Works has changed the way it operates over the last 66 years. Those buildings are not efficient from an administrative standpoint. In bringing these folks under one roof and having everything done more efficiently, we will eventually save the taxpayers money. Right now, this is kind of a cluster of buildings out there that are not efficient. They're just not. I spend a lot of time out there these days, not with you, but at your neighbors.
I'm starting to wonder if I've offended you.
No, I haven't I drive through, I do business out there, but certainly it is not inefficient. It's just not efficient. It's just,
And I
Needs to be fixed.
talked about this, and I'll just throw it out there too, because this is the direction we're moving in terms of, we have a Department of Public Works, we have a Department of, Utility Department. We have 2 department heads. There's been, frankly, just on how we've done previous capital projects, how we've communicated between departments, it has been a struggle, and it has been to the detriment of the organization in the community. Where you have, one department planning a road project that includes utilities, but not talking to the utility department is a big, big problem. Bringing one building together and having it operate as a Department of Public Works with divisions within that department to have a cohesive unit, to help each other, to work together, to plan together, to prioritize together is the goal of building this out as well. So we've had many conversations, Jeremy and I, as well as Alan, since starting, about what the expectations will be in planning this out, as well as moving forward the structure we have within the Department of Public Works to be a far more well-oiled machine.
you can't do business in silos anymore. You can't. And so to put it all under one roof and develop those efficiencies, not only programmatically, but with machine storage and maintenance of things, it's progressive. It needs to be done. We do a disservice to the people of Ripon by not giving them efficient services.
It's all good.
Making it happen.
We're in a good spot right now. I mean, everybody is talking, getting along. It's far better than what it has been in the past in terms of departments. So that's credit to Jeremy and Alan too, just starting now, but their teams as well.
Well, and to you, there's a culture of,
Right.
you bring those committee, this is how I did it, you bring your department heads together and you have meetings and you talk about stuff and you find efficiencies between departments. You just can't allow people to continue as they have the last 10 years going off on their own and doing their own thing. Because you don't get the efficiencies, you don't get the cooperation, you don't get the work done.
We'll get there.
Very good. All right, then I think we can move to F, Department of Public Works, organization changes and hiring.
You kind of just heard part of that, but kind of talk more about what's happening.
So we did have a retirement announcement. Gene Risen is leaving us after 38 years Next week, Friday, is his last day. So since then, Adam and I have talked about updating the position descriptions. I worked on that. Adam did the profile, and we went live with advertising, last week, Wednesday or Thursday?
Ish, yes.
Yeah. So I've received 3 or 4 applications so far, or resumes. I'm beating the streets, so to speak, trying to figure out new and inventive ways to get this in front of people that might not be looking for a job. I'm gonna actually I have a good friend of mine that's a retired mechanic. I'm gonna ask him, if I want to find a good mechanic, how do I get this in front of them?
I'm gonna ask one dumb question here. Have you considered doing internships with the high school? Because I know there are high school students that I've looked into doing diesel mechanic type work and, you know, getting them in even for a couple hours just to help play with the equipment, maybe help with oil changes, et cetera, may not be a bad idea.
We can look at that. My preference would be is to reach out to the technical colleges that offer those programs and try to, someone that has actually taken the initiative to go into secondary school and get a credential that way. Perhaps there is an experienced mechanic that's ASE certified, things like that, so.
Those instructors are definitely a resource to use at any of the technical colleges around. They know who's there and they can get the word out for you also.
And so to be clear too, we posted 2 positions, okay, a mechanic and an operator. And the reason for that is we have sort of changed the structure of the department from having, you know, sort of laborers and then mechanics and then leads and new hires and different categories. We moved to operator and then we will have an advanced operator. So an advanced operator structure would be somebody who is sort of responsible for, say, parks or cemeteries, so they're a little bit more elevated than a standard operator, or have some level of skill set that they bring to the table to take kind of charge of a division or a segment of the department, like I said, parks or whatnot. And then we have mechanics and we have lead. This will not be the first retirement we see in the coming 6 months to a year in that department. The general analytics we have done on just tenure and current demographic of our organization in this particular department shows that there's a chance that I would say up to 7 individuals retire from the organization in the coming year and a half. So we will continue to have this out there, accepting applications. We did not hire a part-time helper, a permanent part-time helper so far this year that was budgeted for. So Alan and I will discuss as we move forward and look at how people will be transitioning in the organization, trying to find the best candidates on rolling submissions and quite possibly preemptively hiring someone who wants to work for us with certain qualifications ahead of someone else retiring as well. We have to begin getting a pool of applicants in. So that is kind of, you know, it's obviously a challenging hiring environment, but regardless of anything that happens, the analytics show that there will be significant turnover in the Public Works Department. Jeremy has weathered that storm over the last couple years. He's hired 2 or 3 people, 3, 4. So I believe they are set for that department for at least a while. But Public Works will become a challenge.
So in the operator position profile, you have on that 3rd bullet point, incumbents must have ability to transport themselves to and from work sites and lift 30 pounds frequently and repeatedly and up to 75 pounds occasionally as needed. I'm just playing devil's advocate, but could someone look at that and go, you may be discriminating against an older person that couldn't lift that weight, where when they were younger they could? Am I reading too much into that, or?
I don't believe any job description for public works related has always included a provision like that. It's a matter of that is what an applicant, should they be hired, be expected to endure in the course of the job. If they're capable of performing it, then they're qualified. If they're not capable, then they may not be qualified.
And to Terry's question about internships, all of that, I think we're going to, just in the back of my mind, as things get developed in the community, like the Boys and Girls Club, which will have a wing dedicated to vocational training and whatnot, looking at how we can support those programs as a city and potentially offer jobs or opportunities for younger people to get engaged in this type of, role earlier on is something that I've thought about. But we have to do a better job of getting in front of people sooner, no doubt. Some of the changes we hope to make and as we evolve, this is an organization that I think people can grow in, learn and excel, as well as, advance. So we want to start treating these positions not just as a, sort of a traditional public works position, but as something that you have an opportunity to start here and advance into wastewater, water. You could advance all the way up to city administrator if you wanted to someday. That is the goal of sort of trying to reorganize and re-energize some of the things we're doing.
I'm just trying to put a bullet out there because I know like the school does an youth apprenticeship program. And I know some of the youth apprenticeships actually have to go to Fond du Lac for like diesel mechanic classes and so forth. And if we have similar things available here, I won't say classes, but training, where they're actually working like at Quality Truck and so forth. Why send them all the way over there when we have them, we can support them over here with the garage?
I think the VOTEC would come here.
Sorry?
I think the VOTEC would come here if you asked them.
It's possible.
Yeah,
But you have youth apprenticeship, you have internships with VOTEX. But we have a high school. The more we get them engaged with what the city can do and provide, I think it's a win.
No doubt, but we even struggled to get summer help. Because how many did we hire? 3 or 4?
The question there is contacting the technical college. How can working for us also mesh with taking the coursework? Do they offer the coursework at night? I don't have second shift work to offer them.
I know the youth apprenticeship at the high school, it's during class hours and sometimes after class hours, depending upon what the organization has to offer.
Oh,
For VOTEC,
you're saying while they're still in school?
While they're still in school.
I took it as being a graduate.
For VOTEC, I don't know the answer to that question. I know some VOTECs offer night classes, but I can't guarantee that. But like I said, I know one person for sure that is attending youth apprenticeship program, and he has to go to Fond du Lac for diesel mechanics.
Right. For what, I participated in something like that when I was in high school. And what I recall is that would be a lesser position. It wouldn't necessarily be the mechanic position. It would be an additional position to the mechanic that is coming in and maybe learning the trade.
Exactly.
So to speak. Yeah.
But it's still, like I said, gets them involved.
Okay. I hadn't gotten that far.
If anybody knows anybody, or if you yourself want a career change, just... Jeff, you want to come?
I can't lift 70, maybe I can, but I try not to. Project updates and staff reports number 6, we've sort of gone through this, right? Or do we have something we've missed?
Do you have anything?
I guess we had a pre-construction meeting for optimized corrosion control and piping modifications today. with the, I guess, the contractor who received the bid. Currently, we're looking at lead times of 6 weeks for equipment, so we're hoping for the, probably the second week of June to actually start.
Very good.
I've got a question. There was pipe television or televisionizing?
Televising, yeah.
Televising, thank you. Is there an update on that? Was that completed?
So that was completed in October of '22, and based on that, we've identified the imperfections that we want to fix. We're working on finishing up the maps of what we want to clean and televise this year, and then we're kind of going to either bid that or give that to a contractor as kind of a complete package. Or at least is my thought right now.
Would that be something where it might be advantageous to do like a 2-year or 3-year contract, or see if we can do, you know, I don't know what that would look
Yeah,
like?
I believe in the contract bidding documents, we
worded
provided
it so that we
flexibility
could,
to do
yeah.
that, because Speedy Clean came back as the cheapest, and we'll likely present it to them as well and go that direction for a second year, just because it was
Yeah.
wildly different, but.
Yeah.
So we're working on finishing up the maps, and then from there, we'll get estimates on the footage that we choose, I guess, as well, too.
I can tell you, I've worked with 3 different televising companies. My preference is Speedy Clean.
Okay, very good. Item 7, suggestions for agenda items, next meeting.
Is this the time that I can?
You could, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I nerded out a little bit. I read our, we had a housing report done in 2019, and this is just an informational thing that I wanted to bring up. There's, you got yours. Just giggles. This is something just looking forward when we're talking about projects and sewer hookups and developments in the city. We're obviously looking at large capital expenditures, you know, on improvement projects and things. And one thing that I'm always considering is looking at, as Ellen had said before, the efficiencies. You know, where can we look at spending the little money that we have, or spending what we have available in efficient ways. And I was reading through the housing report here, and some things popped out to me. Main one being here, when we look at road construction, this would be more for new road construction based on the conversations I had with Adam, is looking at trying to narrow down the roads. So we're just limiting how much roadway we're doing, how much road bed you have to put down. And then that of course is a knock-on effect every year after that, or every time you have to go resurface, or every time you have to go patch, you just physically have less road to work on. So I just wanted to bring this up to the committee as a note. And then further back, there are some things under the infrastructure recommendations where there's incentives for maybe looking at reducing hookup rates for city water and sewer. Those are just some things that popped out to me that would be really good. We may have to propose, or we definitely would have to propose to the council maybe to modify ordinances if there's any ordinances in there, or propose some sort of plan moving forward. And then moving on to that, there's definitely some grants and other funding, which obviously you guys are all looking at. I know that already. But this was just something that really kind of popped out to me, and I wanted to bring up, as obviously public works infrastructure is going to be a continuing cost, and hopefully as Ripon grows, we can do it at a nice, steady and sustainable pace. But we definitely need to look at ways that we can kind of leverage what we're doing now and leverage that into future, you know, sustainability and future use. So my suggestion for an agenda item is maybe I'd ask Alan to look at, you know, maybe an A/B comparison, or look at like a 25-year breakdown of if we built a division or did a road work, a new road at the current width that we're doing things, or maybe there's like the State Street project where we did that work. What would that cost look like if we had reduced the road width, or if we had done some changes, not only the initial cost, but like a 25 or a 50-year cost? Because obviously we don't have the funds to go and redo every road every 25 years, you know, that we would all love to see it. But
I don't even know if we need to look at the analysis on that. Obviously, we know it costs less. What you'll hear from developers is they prefer the narrower roads because it's less money out of their pocket because they're not giving away more land as far as developing the roads. In your local roads within like a residential subdivision, the narrower, the 60-foot right-of-ways is most common right now.
okay.
That's already the game plan.
Good.
I would imagine the same would hold true here. It's when you get into collector roads
Yeah.
where you start getting more traffic volume, where you have to then start thinking, at what point in time, based on projected traffic volumes, do we go with a wider road in order to promote safer conditions if we want parking on both sides?
Yeah.
Or what this community will soon start seeing at some point in time, how do we incorporate bike lanes into our roads?
Yeah.
Because that has the potential to widen some of our roads if you're going to also maintain parking.
Right. And I have a concern that I see on Newberry where I live is that our road is quite wide because it has allocation for parking on both sides of it. But what that leads to is people have a wide open road when there's not cars there and
Excessive
they speed
We
really
do that on
badly.
State Street too.
And I know our officers are aware of this because I see them every once in a while, you know, investigating that.
This
So-
is something that I'm sure that Adam and I will be talking with our consulting engineers about when we get into a mode of reconstructing a road. Is that then time for some of these roads to then be narrowed?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we talked a little bit, what's done out into the field already is somewhat done.
Yes.
On some level. There are areas, whether it's a state highway project or State Street, for example, we're not taking curb and gutter all the way up. We're keeping a section of it rural because of cost. So we're trying to, make, logical decisions on some of the stuff we are dealing with now. The idea of lean infrastructure moving forward for new developments is going to be critical, and we talked about that. So whether it's a developer or the city or somebody taking on those developments, having the flexibility to promote lean infrastructure will be critical to the affordability of that development. And then, yeah, there may be other areas during reconstructs where we sit there and we say, here's a road, it's this big. Can we give some more terrace back? Can we shrink it up? Certainly people have their opinions of that, depending on how many cars they have and where they want to park them. But it's something we certainly talk about in terms of future development, how we handle these things, because a lot of the ways things were built over the last 30, 40 years were done in a very inefficient and costly way that we are now inheriting today. And how can we better prepare for the future?
So can we talk about this more in the next meeting?
I would love to, yeah.
And I mean, I'm happy if we put it on the agenda.
Maybe a general note of infrastructure, efficiency, roadway construction guidelines in the name of.
I mean, there's communities that do complete street ordinances, things like that. You get to a point, some of those things, though, I just caution, you can research that term, but complete streets where you require every street designed in your community to have bike lanes, have all these things. And it sometimes, to Alan's point, it is contradictory to your goal of affordability. So you just, we'll look at some things, but we can put it on.
Fair enough. And just a real minor thing, but that corner, and maybe there are other corners in town, but the corner at Douglas and 44 still has some survey markers up on the corner of that intersection was rebuilt 7 years ago, 8 years ago, why would you still have survey markers? It's not us, I mean, it's the DOT, I think.
You say survey markers?
Yellow stake markers.
That say right away on it, or RW?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you just drive around, look for things sticking out of the ground?
Well, now that he mentions it, they stick out when you're coming into town. You see there's a couple on the right side because there's those pine trees.
Well, they just,
And you just see
there's
the
just some
very-
things just kind of jump out, yeah, it's like, there should be a minimum level of professional decorum when you work on a job and you get it done and you
Clean it up.
clean it up.
I
mean,
know that those are common, and once you get out in the country, I guess the question is has the DOT not recognized that that's now within the corporate bounds? Maybe that, you know, I can take some photographs and send it off to the DOT and just ask them.
Ask them if they're depreciating the asset or they would like it maybe back someday. I'm kidding, but,
Maybe they'll
I
just
thought
say
it
if they
was funny.
disappeared, we don't care.
yeah,
The homeowner accidentally knocked one over with the lawnmower.
yeah, wreck the blade. Okay, well, all right, then announcement for the next meeting date, do we have that?
We'll play it by ear, maybe next
As
month, maybe
needed.
the following.
Okay. Motion to adjourn then would be in order.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.